Hi, I'm Kevin EuDaly. Here's a little bit of what you'll see in this episode. On Tuesday, July 2nd, I was up at dawn in Heavener, and first thing I saw was a southbound Texas Utilities coal train with BNSF power up front. And I shot that at Heavener, but I was really after KCS and especially after Bell's. So I waited at Heavener for a work train that was knocking around in the yard, a ballast train. It had a pair of ST70 Max, and those locomotives in particular, I think, wear the Bell scheme rather well. So I waited around for them, and that killed part of the morning. Eventually, they did go south, and I chased them to Eagleton, where I caught a intermodal train going north, chased that back to Heavener, and then it was lunchtime. After lunch, the next thing I opted for was the Fort Smith Dodger. And I caught it on coming off the branch, caught it several places on the branch, chased it into Podo and then followed it to Heavener. A trio of BB Bells is always a win, in my opinion. I love the locals on the KCS. Then after the Fort Smith Dodger, the next thing up a couple hours later was a northbound Manifest, also with Bell locomotives on it. So I chased that. And then behind that was a CP-led oil train. And then kind of finished up the day with the Marble City Dodger. That's a Dodger that runs north out of Heavener up to Marble City and back, and usually leaves very late afternoon, early evening. And I learned that was running from Jim DeNike. Jim is a regular on that part of the railroad. It seems like more often than not when I'm on the Rich Mountain portion of the KCS, I run into Jim, and it's always fun to visit with him. So all in all, a pretty good day. Got some good action, got some good locomotives. The KCS still looks like the KCS, even though it's officially CPKC these days. decided not to chase the coal train because this work train has a pair of 3900s on it, which I would much rather shoot. And I suspect that it's empty and heading to Hatton for reloading. So that's what I'm going to wait for here at Heavener. Well, I'm questioning my decision. I didn't chase the coal train, waiting on the work train, who's been sitting in the yard for about 20-25 minutes now. And all that he's managed so far, besides giving his statistics to the dispatcher, is a garbled conversation with a guy with a poor radio that took 15 minutes to find a better radio. And he did a radio check and nothing else has happened, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be here now. But coal train's long gone. He's probably at Page by now. So I'm stuck at Heavener waiting, which is often the case. But Heavener's a great place to sit and wait. And they keep toning the dispatcher, but I never hear any response. It's been like that for 10 minutes now. Well, the work train finally got a hold of the dispatcher, and he's waiting on a grain train. So there's a grain train with 8600, and he's waiting on that. And I don't know whether that's an empty coming north or a load going south. We'll find out soon. So it's now been an hour and 45 minutes since the coal train went south, and the maintenance avoid train is still stuck in the yard, and we have a grain train that is sitting on the main line with everything blocked. So who knows how long it's going to be before this maintenance avoid train with the 3900s gets on the road. rock train, but didn't pay attention to my sixth sense. So I'm stuck waiting for this guy to clear page while the work train goes up the hill. And one of my all-time favorite things, lunch in the car trackside. I'm sitting at Howe, which is north of Heavener. Eating my salad, chips and dip, kombucha, the usual. Almost nothing better than lunch trackside. Because there's a time lock on the switch where the branch comes onto the main line, they sit here at the junction for about 10 minutes. They have to get permission from the dispatcher, and the crewman goes down and punches the time lock button, has to wait 10 minutes, and then he can throw the switch. So They're sitting at the junction, and crewman's down there at the switch. Catching a pair of SD70 Max is always a highlight, but add to that one of the GP22 Ecos 2040 leading the Fort Smith Dodger, and that makes a great day. Thanks for watching.